everybody, Phil Liggett with Paul's show in the 2005 season is upon us, and a magnificent crowd here in Ghent to watch the 60th running of the Omloop Het Volk. Max van Heeswijk, all smiles, but indicative. Here's George Hincapie, traditionally always fit at this time of the year. And the cheers there for Georgie Hincapie, Paul. Big pressure on the Discovery team this year, but the weather absolutely freezing.
Well, it's actually only just creeping above freezing. It's 1 degree Celsius, and as you can see, the majority of riders at the start are very much wrapped up against the elements, and fortunately the snow has cleared, but there is still a little bit of snow out on the course.
Magnificent crowd, I have to say, but we expect that here now, because this is the area where we see everybody enjoying the sport of cycling. Well, the last time we saw Stuart O'Grady was a couple of weeks ago. We were in South Australia with him, and it was very, very warm. Now you can see his breath. Jan Kirsepu was actually with Stuart O'Grady there for the Tour Down Under. Now I wonder if he's got some form that might give him a sprint victory today. And Tom Boonen, the man on the block, big winner last year and progressing magnificently.
Started his season in the Tour of Qatar, and he will try and help this man, Paolo Bettini, the Olympic gold medalist last year in Athens. A phenomenal performance by this man, who really is one of the top one-day riders in the world. And Lars Mikkelsen of Team CSC, he's no stranger to winning in Belgium, because he's a former winner of Ghent-Wevelgem.
Yes, Lars Mikkelsen always manages to turn out some of the excellent performances at this time of the year again, down the slippery old slope. And the crowd here mesmerised by the occasion. We're actually just adjacent to the old Sports Palace here in Ghent, and inside the old stadium there, the Cycle Velodrome, is a magnificent bust to Tommy Simpson, who is pretty much a hero here in Ghent, where he spent most of his racing career. Stefan Wesserman, T-Mobile.
Stefan Wesserman, a man who really enjoys these kind of events. He's the kind of rider, I think, who will be looking forward to getting out onto the cobblestones. A lot of cobblestones in Het Volk, and I have to say the early part of the event very much resembles races like the Tour of Flanders, and this year as well they will be taking in the famous Muur de Grammont.
23 teams here today. This isn't part of the new Pro Tour this season. That is yet to get underway. This used to be, though, the same start place, Paul. As we look at Peter van Petegem, he's the doyen so far of this event. He's won it 3 times. As he chats here to the commentator, looks in good form, good mood. Robbie Mcewen again back in the colours as Australian champion. And as I was saying, Ghent-Wevelgem, this used to be the traditional start place for Ghent-Wevelgem as well. But today it's the rollout time for the 60th Omloop van Het Volk, cheered away. Bit miserable the conditions, a hint of snow in the air actually. It's plus 1 degree Celsius, that's about 34 degrees Fahrenheit. There's the snow we're talking about. This is the top of the Muur de Grammont, and that's only one of the 11 climbs today.
Yes, the climbs actually in Ghent, as it used to be called, coming very early on. The first climb of the day is the Kattenberg, but it's once you get down to the Pottenberg, the Muur itself, the Muur de Grammont, then you've got the Eikenberg, the Leidenberg, Berendries, and the final climb of the day, the Molenberg, is after 135 kilometres, which actually leaves the riders with 70 kilometres still to go to the finish.
By tradition to the Northern European, this is where the cycle race season starts in any year. We're joining the action 77 kilometres from the finish. 3 riders here, just fractionally ahead of the field by about 23 seconds. Tanking, Karsten Kroon, Stein de Volder in the break. Stein de Volder on the Discovery team, sitting there at the back. No, he's in the lead at the moment of this move.
Well, Stein de Volder just on the front there is a rider that Johan Bruneel really does believe is going to be one of the next stars of Belgian cycling. He's a very talented rider, turned professional just towards the end of last year. This is him, first chance we get to have a look at him, and Team Discovery Channel certainly here trying to open up their account this season. That looks like a picture postcard from Christmas time. Well, it isn't. It's the opening event of the year in Belgium, and it is absolutely freezing, just tickling the freezing point of 0 degrees Celsius. These guys have got around about a 21-second advantage over what really is still a very large main field.
It makes you shiver. I mean, a lot of these riders are coming now with the new tradition to the sport of getting fit early on in warmer climbs. There's the Jacobs Creek Tour Down Under, there's the Tour de Qatar, and then you have to come back to this. I even met some cyclists this year who are riding only one of the sunny races because they said they've got to get back to Belgium and acclimatise to the colder climates so they can do well in events like the Omloop van Het Volk.
Achteraan van de peloton in Flemish means this is the back end of the main field, and as you can see it's already stretched out in a fairly long line. We're looking at 76 kilometers to go. That's Pieter Verrezijn on the front. He's obviously thinking about the possibility of a good ride towards the end by Stuart O'Grady. O'Grady, I think, is in very good form here, and he does enjoy this kind of event. He's a tough bike rider, Stuart O'Grady, ridden well in the past in races like Paris-Roubaix and of course the Tour of Flanders.
Well, as we look at the peloton early on today, it's been attacking riding, by the way, right from the off. There was a crash, and the main injured victim was Tristan Hoffman of Team CSC. Off to a very sad start to the 2005 season, Tristan, because he's been confirmed he has an open fracture of his left leg. That really is bad luck.
You can see that not only being a season-ending injury for him, but quite possibly a career-ending injury as well. A brief glimpse there, Robbie Mcewen coming to the front. Although Robbie Mcewen is the Australian national champion, a title which he won in January in Australia, he feels very much at home in Belgium here, and in fact most of the race today goes very close to where he's based. He lives in what is known as the centre of the cycling universe in Belgium, the small town of Brakel.
A little hint of cobblestones there. This is a good area for racing now, down the concrete slabs. You know you're racing in Flanders when you see those concrete slabs that just lie around the course, and suddenly you bounce off the smooth concrete onto the cobblestones. The peloton's pretty active at this point, seemingly the race under control. Just a little bit of snow here whisked down overnight.
So dangerous, these roads as well. Actually, they look as if they're fairly well made, but the concrete roads actually normally, you can see that line down the middle there, it's actually stuck together with a bit of tar, and sometimes that tar gets ripped out and it leaves a hole, and we always used to call that Death Valley, because if you get your wheel stuck in there, it's absolutely impossible to get it out, and that line down the middle of the road provokes a lot of crashes in races in Belgium.
Yes, and this is, as you can see, there's no cycle path here, so legally you're allowed to ride on the road if there's no cycle path. If there is a cycle path in Belgium, then you must ride on it. That's the law. Not, of course, when it's a cycle race and the roads are closed like this.
The final climb of the Molenberg is a long way from the finishing line, but this race is very often decided by the cobblestones down towards the end, because in the last 20 kilometers there's about 5 kilometers of very long, hard cobblestones, and that's where in the past men like Johan Museeuw have laid the foundations to victory, and it's obviously where I would expect to see Pieter van Petegem looking to try and jump away for a lone victory. But looking at the long length of the peloton there, Phil, I have a feeling there's a lot of pressure here. There's Georgi Hincapie over to the right hand side. Hincapie really does enjoy these races in the early part of the season, but here he's in the defensive role because they've got Stijn de Volder in that leading group of 3, around about half a minute in front of the peloton.
A lot of work being done here by Lotto's Wim de Vogt. 28 seconds, they're hanging on to those 3, they're not really slipping away at all. De Volder, Kroon and Bram Tankink. As we look down at some very serious faces here, Robbie Mcewen going through, there's George. Boy, these guys are concentrating. I would suspect by now they're beginning to get warmed up. There's a lot of enthusiasm down there too. They look as though they're enjoying it in one way.
Just caught a quick glimpse over on the left-hand side of the other Discovery Channel rider, Jaroslav Ekimov. What a man he is. He's been around for a long, long time. This is Max van Heeswijk just in front, and Martin den Bakker, the former Dutch national champion.
This ride here by Stijn de Volder, Paul, he's exceptionally strong today. Shot to the fore last year when he won the 4th stage of the Dunkirk 4-day. That was his first year on US Postal as it was then. Of course, now it's all changed. This is the first year of Discovery Channel. And this is trouble for one of the riders off the back of the group there. This isn't going to help either, is it?
It certainly isn't. This is really something like putting the nail into the coffin when you're on the rivet and all of a sudden you find yourself a nice little piece of cobblestone section. De Volder on the front there is doing an absolutely sterling ride. He's a very strong bike rider. He's doing the majority of the pacemaking. It's actually the best thing to do on a section of road like this, and he's got the ability to pick the best line, and you see he's actually just using the gutter there to find a slightly smoother road.
A bit of an awkward acceleration. This is Lambau Credit here who's trying to break away. One rider going clear, no reaction from the field. The motorbike's taking advantage of the sidewalk to get through on the peloton, who are staying on the smoother sector of pavé, because on the right it's a bit more bumpy. Packed gutter to gutter now, and the Lambau Credit rider is just about keeping up a little bit of a lead, but it's going to be a fruitless task, I think. One of the few hills in this part of Belgium, slight rise. And we get to see his
Glenn
number
Dollander,
now.
who's come off the front, and he's a rider who for a long, long time has not been very happy with you, because you've had the ability to call him Glenda, and he comes up and says, "My name's not Glenda, it's Glenn Dollander."
Glenda Hollander. He's on his way. In fact, he's been a very strong bike rider, but he hasn't actually won a race since he won the third stage of the Étoile de Bessèges back in February, and that would have been in 2002. So it's a while since he's tasted the fruits of victory. Maybe not today either.
He's been a pro for a long time, though. He turned professional back in 1996. Discovery Channel all over the front of the group here, but this, I think, more a slowing down tactic than anything else. Cofidis are very aggressive at the front end. This looks like Cédric Vasseur. The word has obviously gone out from Stuart O'Grady that he's in good form at the start of the season. O'Grady very much happier with Team Cofidis now that they've strengthened their team for the classics, especially with the addition of the Dutch rider Jans Koorts, who's exceptionally good at these kind of events.
Well, the temperature's still freezing there. The peloton are working as much to keep warm as to chase the breakaways. That's a long, long line of riders, and at this time of the year the disparity in fitness is there for all to see. You're either hanging on or you're feeling strong. And the crowds again turning out for yet another season of Belgian cycling. It's a wonderful place to come if you're a cycling enthusiast. Look at this now. Obviously a change of direction, and the crowd want to see the riders come round the other way. In fact, they're racing for the cars, aren't they? That's what they're doing. They're off to the next checkpoint. That's
what it's all about in Belgium. The Belgian races zigzag all over the area of Flanders, and most of these people know just exactly how to take shortcuts. Jaroslav Ekimov there almost getting the back wheel of Cédric Vasseur, just putting his hand out to steady himself. That's Martin Den Bakker coming to the front. It's amazing that Den Bakker is still around after all of these years. Now on the left-hand side, at 72 kilometres to go, you can see Stijn de Volder. Another move here coming from the FDJ.com team. They've got a very good favourite in their midst by the name of Philippe Gilbert. He's a Belgian rider with a French name on the French Française de Jeux team. I think he'll be looking to do something special here this afternoon.
Oh, this one has been jumped on by the peloton here, and we're heading towards the Molenberg at the moment, which is the last of the 11 climbs, and the race has not split up on the climbs all day today. And the difference between this race and the other classic races is that it's a long way to Lokeren after you come over the top of the Molenberg. Cédric Vasseur there, oh, a little bit of a switchy, and I think that was Ekimov he was talking to.
It was, but I don't know why he actually moved quite so violently. All he needed to do was just glance out of the way. A lot of movement at the front end of the main field. There you can see Glenn Dollander with around about a 15-second advantage over the main field, but those three leaders are still holding on to a half a minute advantage.
Good tempo riding here from Glenda Hollander. 30 years of age he is now, so he's coming towards the end of a long season. This is his 10th racing season. Oh, that's a little bit dangerous.
It's a scary thing about Belgium. Although the roads are nice and wide and they do have cycle paths, there is a parking section in between the road and the cycle path on a number of occasions, and they tend not to move the cars out of the way, so you have to be very, very alert. There's a lot of movement here. You can see the nervousness in the main field, and that nervousness has pulled Glenn Dollander straight back into the fold, and he'll have to accelerate a bit if he can, just to try and stay in contact.
He came into the Sports of Pro with a third place and a lead for a couple of days in the Tour de l'Avenir. There's that scene again. Well, one rider just about dived into safety there, the safety of the main peloton. Now it's back to drive on, and when they're racing like this, just look at the charge now. They're heading to the Molenberg and they're all fighting for the front position, and I think this will reduce the lead of the escapees.
It certainly will. This is almost like teeing up for a bunch sprint. You can see the acceleration, you can see it looks like it's Lotto Davitamon on the front trying to keep the pace nice and high, and that looks like Georgi Hincapie swinging around there in about third or fourth place.
But you know, George is a man for this time of the year. He seems to love the weather in Belgium. He loves to get in amongst it. And when you've got long finger gloves, arm warmers, leg warmers, feet warmers, you feel like you're a barrel riding the bike rather than a super fit athlete sometimes.
Yeah, but Hincapie enjoys the early part of the season because he can ride for himself. He doesn't have to devote the rest of his ability to looking after Lance Armstrong in races like the Tour de France. In Het Volk and Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne, 3 days of Le Panne, and of course Paris-Roubaix in the Tour of Flanders, Hincapie rides for himself, and he has the ability to ride well in those kind of classics. He's suited, his body build is just ideal to be a one-day classics man.
Well, just look at that, there they are, and they've brought them right back here. Everybody's scrabbling for a front position. The three leaders just up the road, Stijn de Volder is one of them, tanking. and Kaito-Kun, and this is Frederic Willems of Chocolat Jacques, and that is bad luck, and that is Belgium, I'm afraid.
That's what in Flemish they call the Lekkerband. A flat tyre for him, and at this speed as we head onto the Molenberg, he's not going to see the back end of the peloton for an awful long time. The three riders just surviving, and look at the traffic jam to get onto these cobbles.
And that was why they were racing for the corner, because the first men are already speeding away. Nasty little climb at 17% this. Huge effort, and who else but Peter van Petegem?
The king of Het Volk, Peter van Petegem, the man from Brakel, not too far away from here, and it really is a nasty little climb this. It's not very long. The three leaders, Phil, have just survived by around about 10 seconds, but look how quickly van Petegem is coming across, and this is why you have to get around that corner in the first 4 or 5 places.
Well, absolute chaos at the back now, relying heavily on the crowds to get you going again. Stein de Volder is looking particularly strong on this climb. He's really stamping on those pebbles. Tankink and Kaito-Kun. Kroon is not a bad climber, but this hill might prove a little bit too steep for him. Oh dear me, absolute chaos there. A lot of those riders will not rejoin now, but I think van Petegem has got onto the back of the other riders of the breakaway here.
Bridged the gap quite remarkably. He's an incredible bike rider, and he knows exactly where to place the effort. Stein de Volder, though, is a man who I think Johan Bruneel thinks can progress into being another great one-day rider. That looks like Hincapie coming across too.
I think it's Ekimov. I think that's Ekimov who's gone across.
Well, oh no, that's right, because there, just at the front of the group, was George Hincapie in about 5th or 6th position. All of these riders very much wrapped up against the elements. You have to be very attentive here.
Well, there's Bram Tankink. New team for him, part of the Quick Step setup. And Stein de Volder is letting nobody settle down here. It is van Petegem who's got up, and he's gone right to the front, and he's using his power now to bring back Stein de Volder. Here comes the man from Russia. Ride for the American squad, Lance Armstrong's confidant, and Vyacheslav Ekimov joins the fray.
Well, that's a good move. Look at this now for Discovery Channel. The man from St. Petersburg, Russia, has got right across the gap, and Hincapie's on the front end of the split. I would think he'll play a defensive role now because he's got two very strong riders in that leading group. But even though the Molenberg is less than a kilometre in length, it's caused some serious damage.
It has put splits in the bunch, and at this time of the year you just don't know how the legs are going to react, you know, and neither does the rider who's sitting behind the rider in front, wondering can he close that gap, or should I go round and do it myself. De Volder, an absolute powerhouse here, hasn't done anything but set the pace since they've come up the Molenberg. I wonder if he realises that Slava Ekimov, his teammate, has just latched onto the back, because with Ekimov and van Petegem, all the major climbs are behind them. This breakaway might go.
They've still got an awful long way to go to the finish, though. 68 kilometres of racing left to do. That is a good split in the main field, and you notice there were no cars behind that group, so there are obviously still 2 or 3 groups trying to reform behind this leading group. Looks like another group trying to come across here. Now this looks like George Hincapie. He won't do anything, I don't think, to contribute to getting across the gap, because he's got 2 men in the leading group.
Well, he's pretty happy with the way the setup's going here. It's perfect. That looks like Philippe Gilbert, who is a top Belgian rider on a French team and had a great season last year. He's setting the pace for Française des Jeux. And the other riders are Mr. Bookmaker.com team, and they're speeding across the gap. Well, George might have linked up here with a perfect train. It'll put 3 Discovery Channel riders right up front.
Look at these roads. Just how narrow can you get the roads in Belgium? This is more just really basically a farm track. Ekimov just at the back there. It's hard to believe Ekimov is just 39 years of age, and he's looking to try and equal the record number of participations in the Tour de France, and you know what? He just might do that. I think this year will be his 15th Tour.
It's absolutely brilliant. Zoetemelk holds the most, 16, finished every one of them. Joop Zoetemelk, he only won it once in 1980. And it was Gilbert, and the man missing there, Mr. Bookmaker, was Garden. He was the rider we saw signing in at the start. And he is actually a Belgian, but his Russian parents came to settle in Belgium, so he was born here.
A little bit like Andre Schmeel, who changed his nationality as many times as he changed teams, and now he's finally a naturalised Belgian. Now this is actually looking rather serious, because Hincapie's group there has rejoined the leading group of 5, and that is a very strong leading group of 8. And Discovery Channel have in fact stamped their authority all over this group, because they've got 3 men in the first 8 riders.
It's brilliant, because they would walk away with the team prize. What a good start for the Team Discovery. Kop van der Wedstrijd to the head of the race now. There's the names for you. The only downside of this is that the 3 riders they have caught must be beginning to feel this pace, and I'm not sure how much help they'll be. That's Garden, who's sitting on the back at the moment behind Philippe Gilbert. Then we've got George, and then we've got the rider there, Bram Tankink. A lot of blues, you know. So it's amazing how these guys do never consult when they design their team colours, but each year you always get
a drift. And
yeah,
it always
one
seems to be the
particular
same drift.
And it's the blue year this year.
It seems to be Philippe Gilbert in the white jersey with the blue club on the back of it, just looking over his shoulder. Man sitting on the back of the group there is Gorik Gardain. Just looking back, that's a 24-second gap back to the front end of the main field, and if we can see just who's chasing, I wouldn't be surprised to see Team Quickstep on the front, because they're the team who seriously seem to be missing out. They know that if they can keep this field together, they've got a very good chance of taking out the win with Tom Boonen, and it is the blue and grey strip of Quickstep.
Well, Gilbert's on form already this year. Got some results under his belt, always pleasing. The main field here keeping good tempo, but all of these riders towards the head of the peloton, except with the exception of Robbie Mcewen I spotted there, have got teammates in that breakaway. So there's not going to be a huge reaction just yet. They're going to have to work on this. We're heading down towards 60 kilometres, just over 40 miles to go.
There's Ludo Dirksen in the front there. Popeye, they call him in the main field. He's a great bike rider, turned professional at a very late age, and this is probably going to be his last professional season. He was saying that he would retire at the end of Paris-Roubaix.
Looking at the face there, Robbie Mcewen just off to the right of our picture there, his mouth open, concentrating. There's Dirksen just tipping up his racing jersey. Everybody keeping the pressure on, just doing enough here, but fanning out across the road, stopping the counter-attacks. Looks like Servais Knaven, is it, side face? Yes. Having a chat with everybody.
There's Cedric Vasseur looking over his shoulder. Not too far away behind him, I just spotted Jimmy Casper, and riding at the front, and the first time I've seen him this year in Discovery Channel equipment, is Roger Hammond over to the left.
Well, it's advantage the men in orange and Discovery Channel at the moment. Rabobank and Discovery trying to back this race off and get that breakaway moving. They've all got riders up there. Little stretch of cobblestones. Boy, they're travelling today though. There's no lack of enthusiasm for the chase. That's for sure. Ruborst is where we are now, round the church.
It's a good gap though, and it's now up to 43 seconds, and I'm pretty sure that Jaroslav Ekimov, George Hincapie and Stijn de Volder, the top 3 men from Discovery Channel, will be giving it full Patrick on the front end of this group. Kop van der Wedstrijd, the front of the bike race, and as you can see, this really is like a mini Tour of Flanders these days, this race. I think the only negative thing I can say about Het Volk is that the climbs are so far away from the finish. The difficulties now become these little bits of cobblestones down towards the end.
At this time of the year, I suspect the riders prefer the long, flattish run-in towards the finish at Lokeren, rather than the other races which will come in the month of April. Apart from the Tour of Flanders, we also have Gent-Wevelgem, which takes in 2 climbs of the Kemmelberg, and then a mad dash to the finish in Wevelgem. Flanders is the one everybody will want to win. And I tell you what, taking through the inside there, Garden is getting a rough ride over those cobbles, because when you're not on the cobblestones, there's a few holes lurking there in the gutter. As we're looking at 63 kilometres to go, 43 seconds the gap. The peloton still not organised enough here, because they're being hampered largely by Discovery Channel, with some good help from Rabobank. Counter move now, Lotto.
Big acceleration on the front. You can see nobody really enjoys these cobblestones. Max van Heeswijk defending there. He's thinking about the position that his men have got in this race. They've got a very strong position with 3 riders in that leading group of 8. This is Chocolat Jacques trying to whip up the pacemaking. Lotto will be pretty happy, I think, with the position of Pieter van Pietegem in that leading group of 8, although a little bit isolated. It's 3-1 Discovery Channel riders against him, but there are, Phil, an awful lot of riders from Quickstep moving forward. There you can just see the 3rd rider in the Quickstep line there is Tom Boonen. 2-stage victories in the Tour of Qatar so far this season, looking pretty good. Look at the face here.
There's a huge effort going on here, and Servais Knaven's second wheel is diving all over the place. And someone is also shouting for more speed. They're sensing they might be getting a split in the bunch here, but they're not improving. Oh, they are, 1 second. I was going to say they're not making any impression on that leading breakaway. I'm interested too to see the proximity of Robbie Mcewen at the front there, because here's a sprinter paying very close attention today to the head of the field. Huge effort being done by Quickstep. They've got themselves organised now, and Tom Boonen's in 3rd place.
Just Kevin Hulsman's on the front, big strong. Look at that. This is the way to handle your bike on the cobblestones. You see there was a little bit of a lip between that smooth piece of road and the cobbles, and what you could just see Servais Knaven doing was lifting his bike across so as not to catch the wheel. And I have to say, you're right, Robbie Mcewen is being very attentive at the front end of the main field. It's almost chaos at the back end of the peloton there, as people are looking for the smoothest section of the road. It's a very difficult effort in the early part of the season. This race, Het Volk, has always been regarded as the curtain raiser to the Belgian cycling season, and it's one that nowadays, especially with these cold weather conditions, turns a very violent section of hurt onto the body.
Just watch this now as the boys dodge mud. That was a nice bunny hop from the rider at the back here, because he came clean over the gutter there. But it's so dangerous now at high speed, hitting these cobblestones unsighted. You've really got to be very, very vigilant indeed. There's a slight split at the front. It's all being caused by Boonen and the Quickstep team. They've really sensed now they've got to break the grip of the teams who are trying to back this race off. And well, you've got to take your hat off to Robbie Mcewen. He's such a brilliant tactician. He knows the wheel to follow. Tom Boonen, the big man of last year, is fast putting his reputation on the line here as the new season begins.
Yeah, Robbie Mcewen defending slightly though, because he's got a man in the breakaway. So too defending is Max van Heesewijk. Look at that acceleration from Van Heesewijk straight onto the wheel of Kevin Hulsman's. He's quite happy with the situation. I have to say though, these riders are really hammering over these cobblestones, and you can see just looking back down the line there, everybody's just grasping onto the wheel of the rider in front. It really batters the body at the start of the season, and something you said earlier about being so wrapped up, it is very difficult to ride hard when you've got these thermal jackets on. It's difficult to breathe. You feel sometimes if the body is superheating and you're just gasping for air, and you really do need a lot of oxygen to keep the pace high. We are looking today at an average speed in excess of 42 kilometers an hour. Yeah,
it's going very, very quickly, and much to my amazement, that group away, which we haven't seen too much of in the last few minutes, is still edging away. 47 seconds here, and there'll be no reaction from Discovery. They've got control of the peloton again, and they'll start to back this off. Maxi van Heeswijk and Rabobank are going to keep control of this race. They've got men up front who matter, just enough to keep the pace steady without damaging the lead right now.
Yeah, that's Dim Bakker in second place. That was a nice move by the two Dutchmen from Discovery Channel and Rabobank. They took the corner first, and they will have backed off the pace just a fraction, just slowing the impetus at the front end of the main field, and they've actually allowed that rider from Chocolat Jacques to move off the front.
I'm not sure whether it's not a credit Lambo credit rider, because it looks as though it's gone back to the style of Glenn Dollander. That I think it is, yes.
It's all status quo.
Doesn't matter anyway. We're all back together again. Meanwhile, back up front, a lot of work being done, and Team Discovery are getting the laugh just now with 3 riders here. Another stretch of bad road, only 350 metres, nothing that.
Peter van Petegem there in second position. Stijn de Volder here, number 91, is doing an unbelievable job. I think he's very happy with the presence of George Hincapie in this group, and of course let's not forget Jatislav Ekimov. But this man here, number 16, Peter van Petegem, really does have to be known as the king of the cobblestones. De Volder, followed by Bram Tankink. Then there is Gorik Gardijn just at the back, and Hincapie actually, Phil, sitting on the back quite a lot here. I think he's probably trying to conserve something down towards the end. Now, well, what's this? Oof! Oh, that was unlucky. Oh, it was well, yes, he just about hung on there. That was very lucky. Oh, totally that was unsighted. Jans Koorts. Yeah, took a heavy blow on his hip there, but he's okay. He's back in it again. Well, I don't know how he stayed upright there. That really is amazing. He's also a good bike handler. Van Petegem up in that leading group, first won this race in 1997. That was 5 years after he turned pro. He's won it 2 times again since. And now he's taking a big gamble here. He sensed at the time he moved up to the leaders that the race was going to split on the Molenberg. Guess he doesn't fancy his chances should it come down to a big pack finish, and so he's made his move.
trouble in camp here.
This is Wiesenhoff at the back. This is Ralph Grapsch who's got a problem, and I think it could be the end of the day for him, because he's going to have to wait a long time for the team cars to come, because in fact over those cobblestones this is exactly what happened. It looks as if as he's looking down there, I think it's a rear wheel flat tyre. Oh no, it actually looks more, it's more than a flat tyre. In fact, I think he's got a mechanical problem with his rear gears.
That wheel definitely seized up. Well, he's left by the roadside. Race over, because you don't get a second bite in these early races in Belgium. The old legs don't take being lifted back up to high speed for very long. The fitness isn't quite there yet. Well, at least the fitness is probably there, but the form isn't. They're still nosing away this breakaway. George Hincapie still a little bit unsure, I think. Not looking quite as fluid as before. And as I said, Van Petegem is taking a big gamble here. He started the race as the favourite, and he's put himself into a leading group, and they're not going anywhere.
Well, they're still holding on to around about the 45 to 50 second advantage. It's hovering at that. You know, the majority of the work in this group is being done by Stijn de Volder. He's an unbelievable bike rider, and I think once again Johan Bruneel has been very clever in picking up a great bike rider. The last good Belgian bike rider he picked up was a man by the name of Tom Boonen. Anyway, this is what is left to go, nog, and these are all the section of cobblestones still to go. And as you can see, there are still 9 sections of cobblestones, but that one 3 from the end, the Koningenstraat, is a very long piece of cobblestones at 2.4 kilometers, and that's where the race is more than likely going to split to pieces.
Well, it wouldn't be Belgium without good cobblestones, that's for sure. It's the very nature of the animal, and people who take part in cycle races here expect to encounter. Now look at this, Quick Step anxious here to try and get this race sorted.
Well, I tell you what, they are not putting any hopes onto the shoulders of Bram Tankink, the man that they have got in that leading group, because they're obviously thinking about Tom Boonen. I think this race is all about Tom Boonen here this afternoon, because if they can get him to the finish, I don't think there's many men at the start of this season who are going to beat him in the sprint.
Well, now this really is Chocolat Jacques here, trying to get away. Huge effort. Big turn of speed, 44 seconds. The gap is starting to come down. I think this is Kevin Van Impe who's going through.
Good move, good acceleration. Using the motorbike cameraman a little bit there to get his gap over the front end of the main field. On the right there, one of the riders from Bouygues Telecom. There's one or two strange moves here, because this Mr. Bookmaker.com rider is trying to get off the front end of the group, and he's got a man, Gorik Gardain, in the main escape of the day, the 8-man group.
A bit surprised he's doing that, actually, because Gaudin is a much better prospect up there.
He's got good form as well. He's just won himself a race in the south of France known as the Classique Haribo. Nice sweet win for him.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that don't know the in-joke, Haribo is the name of a very famous sweet manufacturer in this part of the world. 43 seconds. They're making a lot of hard work of this. They get going, then the teammates manage to get in amongst them, break it up. It looks like Telecom now, who haven't got anybody up there, are going to have to do some of the hard riding. And a little bit of help coming from Chocolat Jacques. And is that CSC? It is, also getting in on the action.
You can see just by looking at the faces of the riders here, you can see this has not been an easy race, Het Volk, here this afternoon. Bit of organisation at the front. You see all the riders coming up from Davitamon Lotto. They are actually trying to block, they're trying to slow down the organisation at the front end of the main field to give their man a bit of advantage. Moving up there, that was the ever-faithful Knaven, former Dutch national champion, a winner of a stage in the Tour de France. He's trying to get his men organised because they want to nail back that group. This is all, I think, today for them about Tom Boonen.
Huge effort by the boys on Quick Step there. I think Knaven actually was shouting at Dembaka to give him a hand, but why should he? He's got a man in the breakaway just now, and he's going to stay there. He is locked into third wheel and help nobody. Tom Boonen down to the far right of our picture, dodging in and out the wheels.
Hulsman's on the front. He's a big, strong bike rider doing a lot of work. These guys, Phil, have got so much confidence in Tom Boonen. All they want to do is get it back together before the end. But you know, since we've come off that Molenberg, one or two riders have disappeared from this peloton.
Well, they're having to queue up to get round the corners even so. Well, you've got to have confidence in Tom Boonen. If he's got the same legs he had last year, he'll be destined for wins in double figures. He actually won 24 races last year, had a wonderful season, including successes in the Tour de France and the Champs-Élysées as well. These boys know the season has started now. This has been a pretty good race today.
It's been an absolutely superb race, and it still is fast and furious. And you can see it's not the place to be. That's Johan Kaito-Kun at the back there, the leader of the Chocolat Jacques team, just wearing number 121. But the pressure is certainly on. Look at the riders from Quick-Step starting to get themselves organised, but they're a little bit ragged. I actually haven't seen very much of Paolo Bettini for the last few kilometres either, and I wonder where he is.
Well, he's either hiding or called it better today. There's the snow. We're getting back into the area where the snow fell as well.
And the gap's increased again. Look at that. Despite the hard chase, they've nicked away a few more seconds, up to 50 seconds advantage.
Yeah, that's that all's well, of course. But here we are back with the leaders now. Long straight line. We've got 3 riders from Team Discovery. Pretty much all the time now. We see at the back here Karsten Kroon, and we've seen his team chasing. So I think he's been ordered now with 3 Team Discovery riders here to stop assisting the breakaway, because help hopefully will be on its way shortly.
It's a long section of cobblestones, this, the Lange Mund, almost 2 kilometres in length, and made up of those little small cobblestones known as clinkers. They're little square pieces of granite, and when they're laid like this, they're not as bad as the cobblestones of races like the Paris-Roubaix. Van Petegem just keeping a close eye on affairs there. He'd be a little bit worried probably by the fact that there are 3 riders from one team in this front group here, but he has got the experience of this race. He loves this race. He's become a master of this race and of Paris-Roubaix and of course of the Tour of Flanders.
Right, well, the peloton now swinging onto that same stretch of cobbles as the leaders. It's quite a long stretch, and the last men out always have most work to do. Out of the saddle, drive on, get into those wheels, and get out of the wind as fast as you can. The boys at the front already into their rhythm. This is a long stretch here, and the peloton now under extreme stretching pressure. Gosh, that's a bleak scene. It could be in Siberia here.
It's unbelievable. It's early season stuff, this, and with a race called Paris-Nice coming up in a short while, a lot of riders must be very worried about the bad weather that seems to have been all over Belgium and Europe at this time of the year. Team Quick-Step now, Phil, are certainly starting to get themselves very organised. There's Tom Boonen with the black collar there, trying to keep himself nice and warm, making sure that he doesn't get any illness at the early start of the season. And Quick-Step now have, I think, been given the word, because they're a little bit worried about the fact that this gap has suddenly tickled up to almost the 1 minute margin.
Riding wisely right down the centre of the road here. See where the cobblestones are. Stay away from the traps in the gutter there. Rather like the bunkers on a golf course. If you get stuck in that, you're over the handlebars. Rabobank have tried to come up, but for the moment they've allowed Quick-Step to get control of this. And that gap, though, is still showing 53 seconds. I can't believe it, but they are nudging it up. We don't get up there very often with the cameras, but I think it's still Stein de Volder. He's the throwaway man for Team Discovery, who is driving that breakaway. Hincapie doesn't appear to be working overly hard. He could be the man they've marked for the win.
I think they're saving George Hincapie for the final couples of sections of cobblestones down towards the end, because this group of 8 at the front will certainly split when we come down to the very long section of cobblestones known as the Koningsstraat. It is long and hard, and if you've got the power in those legs, you can split the race to pieces. But there's a lot of organisation on the front by Quick-Step, and they've got a man in the front, Bram Tankink, who's doing nothing at all to the success of that breakaway. So you could basically say it's only a 7-man leading group. Yeah. And of course Peter Van Petegem, Phil, will keep a little bit back as well, knowing that he's outnumbered by the Discovery Channel riders.
Well, the rider from Quick-Step on the front of this breakaway, I reckon he's pedalling about a 53.12 at the moment. He is just powering. That's at the bunch. We've gone back up to the breakaway. There's the names for you. It's beginning to look a little bit like a Discovery team time trial. Dress rehearsal for the Tour de France, this.
Could very well be. That's de Volder there, 91. Hincapie moving straight across, wearing number 94. We're in Dikkelveen. 53 kilometres to go. Hincapie looks very good, very comfortable, despite the fact that he's wrapped up against the elements. And of course, let's not forget it, we look down at the Belgian flag there. This is their first serious race of the season.
Which way do they go? Well, we don't need any arrows, that's for sure. Right round the corner there, and they'll be glad to get on this smoother road now. That'll certainly make them feel a bit better. That's Arnaud Coyot of France from Cofidis, and they're saying it's Cedric Vasseur. No, it is Cedric Vasseur, it is indeed. He's got a flat tyre, back wheel. He's riding on the flat tyre completely here. Now this is wise, Paul. He's got the flat tyre, he's riding until that car is right behind him.
Yep, well, that's the thing to do when you're a professional bike rider. There's no good stopping immediately because you lose a lot of time. Just keep riding. Don't worry about the wheel. Don't worry about the rim. Somebody else is going to pay for that. Just wait until the team car gets up behind you. And he's being told here that, in fact, sorry, Cedric, the team car's a long way behind. So I wouldn't like to see the state of that rim because he's riding 25 miles an hour here on a flat tyre.
Yes, that rim will be finished very shortly. Well, there's the Shimano car. But he's waiting for his Cofidis team car, and he's trying desperately to just keep that peloton in sight. And he's having to do a hard job here. Boy, he's a tough man. Dad Alain was also a very good bike rider. A few years ago now, rode for the orange jersey, the Beek team from France.
I don't know why he doesn't take a wheel from the neutral service vehicle. They're right up behind him. In fact, they've decided to leave him because he's not going to take a wheel from them.
Here we go.
Has his team car arrived? Yes, there it is.
Now let's have a look if it's a good change or a bad change. He's doing the wheel himself. Mechanic is right on the ball there. Quick lineup, very good.
Not too bad, just adjusting the quick release, making sure he doesn't pull it too tight. In fact, he's got the bike rider up and he's picked the wheel up and he's pushing him off very quickly. Now, that was a very professional move, by the way, by Cedric Vasseur. As soon as he saw the mechanic getting out of the car, he was off the bike, he took the wheel out himself, put it to one side so the mechanic doesn't fall over it. Then the mechanic, all he had to do was just put the wheel back in.
He hasn't even dropped down the gears there, so he's probably on a 53.12 right now as he tries to wind that gear up. Oh, we can't do that. Oh, he's taking a bottle, I see.
That's a professional taking of the bottle. That will accelerate Cedric Vasseur from 40 kilometres an hour up to about 48. And I'm pretty sure the race referee won't be too far behind now. There's a little bit of action there. That was a Discovery Channel team car trying to get past as well.
Well, Discovery wants to go forward, of course. Cofidis will try and stay in the vicinity of their rider and try and coax him through by fair means or foul, but the referees won't be far away. Meanwhile, life up front looks a little bit ragged to me, to be honest. We've lost virtually nothing. 45 seconds, 31 kilometres, 31 miles rather to go, 51 kilometres. And there's the names again for you. A lot of new designs on the racing jerseys this season as well. And the sky, well, give it a month and there'll be lovely blue skies over this part of the world. But right now it is very, very cold. Hardly warmed up all day. You get winter days like that in Belgium. At this time of the year, if it's not snowing, it can be raining. And I think conditions like today are much more preferable than heavy, dank, cold, wet days.
I tell you what, if the rain came down here today, it really would be a damper on affairs. It would take the temperature down to very much below freezing. In fact, I tell you something, Phil, looking at that gap there, it does not look like 45 seconds to me at all. There's a lot of pressure on the front end of the main field. Team Quickstep have really whipped up the pacemaking. They're getting some help as well there from the riders from T-Mobile. They don't have a man in that leading breakaway, but it's very much the chase is on before we get to the next few sections of cobblestones. 30 miles to go, 50 kilometres. That corresponds at this stage.
What's this?
This is rather nasty. Oh, this is the Tristan Hoffman crash just a little earlier.
Yeah. Oh, this is the one that's since been confirmed that unfortunately he does have an open compound fracture of the leg. Hoffman is a very, very good one-day cyclist. Comes up with some great results and ouch. Well, that is a nasty prang. He was placed, of course, in Paris-Roubaix last year, but it looks like it's the left leg confirmed now with an open compound fracture.
Shame for that man, because he's such a great bike rider and a man who would be looking to have a very successful early season classics campaign, especially with Team CSC, who seem to have been over the last couple of seasons the team to dominate the early races. That banner there, I think, was 50 kilometres to go. So that's about an hour and 10, an hour 15 minutes before we get to the finish.
And here at the front of the race now, we've got a couple of the Quick-Step boys again, stepping on the gas. Very, very typical, and they're having a real tough challenge here. Nick Noynes is up here as well now. What a great end to the year that man had, I must say. He really did catapult to superstar status towards the end of last season.
But look at the work being done by Hoffman.
The shouting that's going on, they're really pushing this.
Everybody, you know, everybody is absolutely and utterly on the rivet. On the left-hand side there, you can see the Kop van der Wegstrijd, the front end of the bike race. On the right-hand side, you can see the peloton. And there is big pressure being put on the front end of the main field to try and pull these 8 riders back into the fold. Because in around about 10 kilometres or so, we've got a big succession of cobblestone sections. Van Petegem just pulling his jersey down there, making himself nice and warm before the final part of the race. he looks very calm and collected. He's a very canny bike rider as well, you know. I think he's playing a serious game of poker here, because he knows that with 3 men in this leading group of 8, Team Discovery Channel must be feeling very, very confident that the win is going to be in their camp.
Well, one would say if they don't win, somebody wants a good talking to. You put 3 men in a breakaway, and the way this breakaway formed, everybody came across in 1s and 2s. Strong men they all must be, but I'm not too sure about the long breakaways. Now, I thought that was Peter van Petegem just went through camera, but maybe it wasn't. This is 39 seconds now, so at last it's beginning to eat into that lead. The hard work by Quick Step is paying off. Let's have a look. We've seen the car, now let's see the riders. This is at the back of the peloton, this.
Yep, this is the danger at the back end of the peloton. People trying to take on board as many drinks as possible before we get to the next section of the race. And there was Art Veerhouten going out the back. They're probably looking for the team car. Now, the rules when it comes to taking on board food and drinks from your team car are that you actually have to drop back to the position that your car is in the convoy, and you have to do it behind the car of the race referee. And at speeds like this, it takes a brave man to do it.
It does, and there's a lot of pressure there. Quite a lot of urgency amongst those riders at the back of the race, scrabbling for the wheels. Batelar. Little pan up the road. There's the breakaway. It's not so far by helicopter, is it? It's quite a compact little group now. I think it's turned off.
I think it's actually starting to turn in the other direction. We've come inside of 40 seconds. The man on the back there, Bram Tankink, is not doing very much at all, and he's starting to feel a little bit like a sandbag on a hot air balloon to this breakaway. He's slowing them down. Psychologically, they're feeling all of the time that they're dragging somebody along for a free ride, and it starts to eat into the back of the brain a little bit, and you're thinking, why am I suffering like a dog here? And this guy's getting an easy ride.
There are still a lot of cobblestones to come, and that will give them a good shaking up. There's no more hills now. We've left the hills behind us. We're heading up towards Lochram, which isn't too far away from Ghent. We'll probably be there in about 30 minutes by car after this race got underway today. But for these rides, of course, this is a ride of 201 kilometres, just on 126 miles. Quick Step feel that this race has got to be closed down. They've got the message to the man up front, Bram Tankink, not to assist with the breakaway. We're coming as fast as we can, and so, well, perhaps as slow as they can, because, you know, it's hardly changed for kilometres now. It's 33 seconds. They're going to see these riders in the break now.
Yes, but if you look at the face of the riders from Quick Step there, they want to pull this race back together. They have now decided we're going to take responsibility here. They've got themselves pretty well organised, and they've got a lot of riders at the front of the group. And let's not forget, a few moments ago it was almost tickling the 1 minute margin, and these guys have halved that to the 30-second mark. Max van Heeswijk there, just sitting up, keeping himself nice and warm. And just behind him was Roger Hammond, who, over his British National Champions jersey today, is wearing a Team Discovery vest.
Well, this is a new departure for Roger Hammond, the British road racing champion for the last couple of years, and this year, as he signed for Discovery, they decided he wasn't to ride cyclocross, which is his favourite way of preparing for the season. So it'll be interesting to see how it affects his form, actually, because he's been very dominant in World Cyclocross. He's been a junior world champion, and in Britain he's virtually unbeatable when he chooses to race there.
Yeah, but he's been given the chance now of coming to one of the top teams in the world, and I think taking advice from men like Johan Bruneel, I think we'll see a slightly different Roger Hammond when we go to races like the Tour of Flanders and, of course, Paris-Roubaix, which he finished third in last year. This is Carnarvon on the front.
Yeah, familiar style, isn't it? Crouches down, bent elbows. Won a lot of big races one way or another. Won Paris-Roubaix, he's helped himself to the Tour de France stage. And yet he is a workhorse, a super domestic, a man who gets on with the hard work in anybody's team. Great value for money.
Been around for a long time. He's been the Dutch national champion. T-Mobile also moving to the front, but there's only one rider from T-Mobile at the front of that very long line of Quick Step riders. I think when you see the way Quick Step have got themselves organised here, look at the gap. You can see they are having an effect on that breakaway, because it's down to 25 seconds. Just sitting at the back of that line there is the big man from Antwerp, Tom Boonen. Just behind him then you can see Max van Heeswijk. But Tom Boonen today, I think, is going to be very alert over the last few sections of cobblestones, because if this is a large group of 15 or 20 riders, I don't think anybody is going to beat the big man from Anvers.
45 kilometres to go. 24 seconds now. They're slowly chipping away. Just to finish the tail of Servais Knappen. We mustn't forget, Paul, he was third in this race 5 years ago. He's a man for these single-day classics. He's a tough rider from Holland. And the whole of Quick-Step clearly have got their plan sorted. They've been doing a lot of work here. And they are riding down a breakaway in which they have a teammate, and that's the order. Nasty little chicane, but the roads are very dry now. The hint we were getting sleet earlier on, it seems to have gone away as we head into Lemberg.
Actually, just a couple of days ago, the whole of this Quick-Step team got together to have a look at the course here. They went out and rode around about 120 kilometres of the final of the race just to make sure they were getting it fixed into their minds after a strong training camp. The leading group of 8 have still got the limpet mine sitting on the back, Bram Tankink. He will be under strict team orders not to contribute at all to the success of this breakaway. And the reason for that is because it's his team who's chasing to try and pull it back. Just 22 seconds now. Stein de Volder is the man who, for Team Discovery, has done an unbelievable job of work. You can see the 3 Discovery riders at the front there. Hincapie with the long black leg warmers on, trying to keep himself as warm as possible. He's always performed well when he's come up here to race in Belgium. Over the last few years, he's really been the one-day man for US Postal Service and now for Team Discovery Channel.
Well, in principle, if we were to make the finish without the peloton, it'll be a battle between Big George and Peter van Petegem, who's just gone through the front now. And my money would go on Peter van Petegem today. He's a man for this event, looking for a 4th win in the Het Volk and working very hard. He's made a move here. He may be totally committed now, because if the peloton does bring him back, may not be any left in the legs. There's a very casual Tankink here. Been told to sit there. Might be happy with that, but he can't contribute to the pace at all. Philippe Gilbert already up in the placings this year and riding very, very well. One of the few French riders that does well on Française des Jeux. On the Belgian riders, on the French team.
Yeah. That's de Volder. You can see the grimace starting to appear on his face now. It's not surprising because he's one of the riders that started this breakaway. He was in that early breakaway of 3 riders that was joined just over the top of the Molenberg and then joined a little later on by his teammate George Hincapie. Gardéen going through the gap. Karsten Kroon, wearer of the King of the Mountains jersey in the Giro d'Italia a couple of years ago, but ever since then we've seen him ride very aggressively in races like the Tour de France. He's a man who, like a lot of the Rabobank riders, has been very dedicated to the development of this squad. Came up through the ranks, started off as a development rider and has now become a member of the fully fledged Pro Tour team of Team Rabobank, a team which has been very good for the sport as a whole, because not only do they support the top end of the sport, they support mountain biking, cyclocross, track racing and the development squad, and of course a women's team as well.
Yeah, it's a magnificent setup, and the Dutch are very rightly proud of what they have there, but they've got to deliver the goods. This is the elite, what will be the Pro Tour team now this year. And the big aim of the boys on Rabobank 3, which is the nursery section, is to get a place on the big team. And there's plenty of them riding very, very well. Well, they're speeding over the concrete, but sitting at the back rather, Karsten Kroon. Highlight of his life, I suppose, was his win in the Tour de France, which came in 2002. The year he did lead in the King of the Mountains, he did win the Intergiro, which was the sprint competition. So he's had his moments. He's only won 5 races, but he has his moments. Yeah,
but last year I think he had a great win when he was the winner of the Grand Prix of Frankfurt, and that was a good move by him. Stein de Volder just switching across there. I think his legs must be screaming out in agony now, because he's taking it a little bit longer to get to the front. These riders, the main field right now can see them in the straighter parts of the road. It's just 20 seconds. That corresponds to around about 400 meters.
Well, having just said to you it was dry and nice, the drizzle is starting now. You can see the spots just coming onto the camera lens here. That's just going to put a horrible little slippery film of water across these roads. So it's also affecting our pictures for the moment. It'll settle down shortly.
It's going to make the final sections of cobblestones a bit precarious as well, because just that little layer of dampness on the cobblestones makes them absolutely treacherous, almost like an ice skating rink. Front end of that group, the guys are still doing a lot of work, but you know, Peter van Petegem is taking a lot more time sitting at the back of this group. I think he realizes which way the ball is moving, and as far as I can figure out, this group is going to get themselves caught in the next 4 or 5 kilometres.
Well, the rain might be hampering the chase now. We'll keep an eye on that clock. 24 seconds currently. Got to watch these right-hand bends now because they're getting onto slippery road surfaces. And it looks as though we're coming into an area where the rain might have been falling for just more than a few minutes. Bram Tankink in the best place to watch. We're about to go across that lovely bridge over the River Schelde, which is one of the famous navigations here in this part of the world.
Yeah, this is the town of Larne. This is the town that Etienne de Wilde hails from. One of the great track sprinters in his time. Had a very long career in the 6 days, and I actually raced with him in the Tour de France when he was a top rider on the road with the La Redoute squad.
Yes, I remember Etienne, brilliant track rider and an equally brilliant road racing cyclist. He went on quite long in his career too, which is always a good sign. Well, there's the Peloton. Surely they're going to get them back now because they've only just gone over this bridge, and here comes the Peloton. Quick Step riding at the front now, driving on. The Peloton can't control now. This is the big chase down, but I think it's having its effect too. Take a look at the faces here on Quick Step. They are just about on full level here. And I think that's Rolf Aldag, yes it is, from T-Mobile, just behind too, trying to get in and assist the chase.
These guys are, as we say in cycling jargon, absolutely on the rivet. That's an expression that goes back to when their old saddles were made out of leather and they were held down with brass rivets. And if you were sitting on the front end of your saddle, that was an indication that you were having a bit of a hard time. The main field picking their way around. You know, that gap is certainly coming down second by second, and it's all because of the dedication on the front of Team Quickstep. In the back of their minds, all they're thinking about is big Tom Boonen. Not only can Tom Boonen take this race out in the sprint down towards the end, but you know what, if he had to, I would think he could probably ride away on the cobblestones.
Oh, tremendous work here. I think this is Nick Noyens again doing a lot of work on the front. There's only a few drivers of this peloton and an awful lot following in the train behind and waiting to play their cards, I suspect. Ralph Aldag getting in amongst it. Why wouldn't he? Because he's a really good workhorse of a cyclist. He must be coming towards the end of his career now.
He must be. He's been around for a long time, but he's a guy who's always been counted on in the team. He's the kind of rider who is competitive from the very start of the season. As we see him here in the month of February, you'd still be talking about Ralph Aldag in September and October.
It's a long year. He's 36, nearly 37 years of age now, Ralph. He will be in August this year. Pro since 1991. Had a great career as a pro bike rider. A couple of wins last year, and strangely enough, the king of the mountains in Tirreno Adriatico, which isn't too far away, next time around. And always a right-hand man of anybody in the team. He is the workhorse. Stephen Keithoven from Chocolat Jacques. That's the new LPR team here too, and Daniela Contrini.
I think the team manager telling him that this is not the place to be at the moment. You need to get up to the front because very shortly we'll be starting another section of cobblestones. There's the famous motorway they're crossing now, that motorway linking Antwerp with France. Goes straight up and down the centre of the country. The strange thing is, if you leave France and drive across Belgium to Holland on that motorway, it'll take you less than an hour. Not a very big country, eh?
No, it isn't. An LPR in their second season of being, and Contrini, no wins last year for him. Head of the race, 39 kilometres, 13 seconds the gap, it's all over.
Basically it's all over bar the shouting. I think those guys from Discovery Channel now realise they bet on the success of this breakaway. I tell you what though, looking at these roads, it's going to be a very precarious run over the last few sections of cobblestones. And the temperature has dropped just that little bit because of the rain coming down to below freezing point, around about 28 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 2 degrees Celsius. Ooh, not much fun.
Chilly enough in the commentary box, I have to admit. But all the boys in blue, which takes up most of this breakaway, and Gardine looking over. He might have caught a glimpse there, 12 seconds of the race coming up. Bram Tankink has played his part well. He's been told to sit there he has, saved a lot of energy because of it, and could well move off with the next move here because it's his own team bringing the race up.
12 seconds, that's not very much. That comes down to, I would say, around about 120 metres, and there they are. This is the town of Heusden, We're not too far away from Ghent. I would say around about 10 or 15 kilometres.
Yeah, no more.
We'll shortly be turning up towards the north.
8, because I used to live here, Paul. Can you believe that, when I was a cyclist? It's my hometown. A member of the Velo Club Oustacker, which was a great club. I'm not sure if it's still in existence. I don't think they've missed my performances.
Probably still is very much around. Lots of clubs in Belgium thriving on the sport of cycling. And as we look here, this is really bad luck for the boys from Discovery Channel, because they have thrown every one of their eggs into this one basket. And I think the basket is about to get broken there, because it's inside of 10 seconds. Tactically, I would say right now is the time just to sit up, and they're actually sitting up. They're looking over their shoulders. They know the main field is coming. It was a good try, but it didn't work on this occasion. And
I think without Quickstep, it would have worked, because Quickstep have done all of this work to bring them back. T-Mobile didn't have anybody in there either, but I really think if Quickstep hadn't have been driving this, there was quality in that breakaway that should have converted into victory. Van Petegem and George Hincapie principally, but others were good riders there as well. So here comes the catch now. They're going to slowly but surely be another kilometre yet before they hook up, and then we're going to see more attacks.
Well, somebody's already gone. This is the out of the handbook move here. As soon as you're about to get caught, launch yourself off the front. I would like to think that's a rider from Discovery Channel, but from 1,000 feet it's very difficult to see, especially with the weathers like this. Bram Tankink, of course, on the back is the man who has to respond. It's his job to go with any of the counter-attacks.
Yeah, he's done it well. I'm not sure who it is. Is it Philippe Gilbert? I'm not sure. These are the boys who were in trouble.
This is Ekimov. He's been caught out by the little bit of aggression up there. It was certainly one of the riders from Discovery who went off the front, so I wonder if it wasn't the shape of Georgie Hincapie.
Well, I think he's the only one left to make the move, but let's try and get down there very shortly. Our cameras are catching up with life on the ground floor. Huge crowd that just on the left of the road. Look, umbrellas up, watching the race go by. It's Philippe Gilbert. Yeah, the white jersey from the Sky.
Well, it was a good move, but a little bit of a last-minute burst. You can see that's Hincapie there, just about to get picked up by the front end of the main field, and I don't think that attack is going to go anywhere at all. 36 kilometres to go. Not too far away from the section where we've got a repetitive nature of these cobblestone sections being thrown at the race. Tankink just sitting on the back. He still won't do anything at all. Look at him, just looking over his shoulders, trying to see what the reaction is going to be from his teammates. This looks like Leon Van Bon.
It is Leon Van Bon, and he's contacted the leaders as well here. A couple of wins last year for Leon. Stage of Paris-Nice, stage in his home Tour of Holland. That must always be a nice place to win when you're Dutch. 36 kilometres, and the man who often slips into the move that matters. Very shrewd bike rider. He's well known in the United States because he's won a few stages of the old, now defunct Tour du Pont in the United States, and he's always done good rides again at this time of the year. Never had, to my knowledge, a very high finish in Het Volk though.
But he's always been attentive, always been a part of his team's strategy. Team Discovery Channel at the front end of the group here now. I think they've thrown all of their cards on the table and not come up trumps. As you can see, actually it's rather strange, because now that Quickstep have got this race back together, they seem to have completely and utterly switched off, and now that could be an advantage for that small group of riders just off the front.
Now when you see riders cram the front, new decisions awaited. Is this Max van Heeswijk who's moved up to the front now? Starting to pick up the pace again. Oh, this has been a rough race at the front today. It's been a real race. If you've had the strength to get in amongst it, it's been a great race. Team Discovery are impressive.
Very impressive. Yaroslav Ekimov still at the front of the group as well, prepared to do a fair amount of pacemaking. They actually got caught out in this flurry of attacks here. So on the front is Gilbert, Tankink on the back. Sandwiched in the middle is Leon Van Bon, another former Dutch national champion. And this weather is not making this a very fun race here this afternoon, because this weather is certainly putting a nasty film of dampness over the surface. A magnificent chateau just on the pass there. That's the Chateau of Larne, surrounded by the moat. 3 leaders there waiting for this nasty little section of cobblestones. And I tell you what, you have to make sure at the start of the year here that you've got your tyre pressures to absolute perfection. This is the Kasseien of Kazeldorf, just 200 metres in length, and you see how Philippe Gilbert, the back end of his bike, is just slippering a little bit, and that's because they really are being turned into an ice skating rink. This is Ekimov on the front. Discovery taking complete and utter control, and it looks like, is that the German national champion on the left?
That's what I was thinking, yeah. Wrong country, right idea. 200 metres of very slippery cobblestone here now, and this, you remember, could take your mind back to the Tour de France when the boys from Discovery, including Lance Armstrong, took the field apart in conditions like this. Perhaps they're practising.
Roger Hammond practising for his new team on the front, his national champions jersey there covered by his Discovery Channel jersey. Georgi Hincapie riding a very aggressive race at the front. He still thinks he's got the ability to find the right move, but I would think he's put a lot of energy into that breakaway of 8 riders, and maybe that's going to count down towards the end. Just 33 kilometres to go. The small town of Larne, Van Petegem a little bit further back as well. Everybody nervous at this point in the race as they realise that maybe the moment is going to come when the race does split.
Less than 40 minutes of racing to go now. Nothing to these professionals. At this time of the year, they're all in disarray. As we now see the big passenger here, Bram Tankink, he's leapfrogged from one group to the next, still stays in the same position, and still we've got the same riders trying to get up. But this time, Discovery are having a bigger say in the situation because they've no longer got riders up here at all.
It's important for them, I think, with a new sponsor to try and get some big victories under their belt nice and early on.
I think we've got the whole team on the front right now, Paul. The whole squad has been told to get up and team time trial that breakaway in.
Team tactics, I think. Obviously, Hincapie, despite the fact that he was in that breakaway, is obviously feeling pretty good at the start of this season. So he's had a word with the boys and said, come on, let's keep this race together. We can split it up when we get to the cobblestones, because I think, you know, with the weather conditions changing like this and the rain starting to come down, although it's not hard, incessant rain, it's enough to make the cobblestone sections coming up rather dangerous. There on the front is Yaroslav Ekimov. Little flick of the arm there saying, come on, Roger, your turn to do the pacemaking. There's Hincapie. But look at that Boonen, you see. He's very attentive too, in about 5th or 6th position, and strangely enough, he's a former teammate of most of these guys.
You've got to admire the strength of Yaroslav Ekimov. Nearly 40 years of age there. Course through Roger Hammond, who really had to dig deep there. Grit his teeth. One rider's taken the shortcut round. Pretty dicey. But this is Belgium for you. You see the dotted lines down there. They are actually the cycle paths which under normal circumstances you must use. And we still have 3, 6, 7 stretches of cobblestones to go. This race has never been together, but the breakaway has never been far out of sight. It leads to a hard bike race.
It leads to a very hard bike race because everybody's on the rivet all of the time. The piece of elastic is almost ready to break at any time. See how precarious these corners are. The roads broken up by the very severe winters in the northern part of Europe here. Discovery Channel just keeping control. They've just got this gap inside of the 10-second mark. I'd have to say I think that motorbike was a little bit too close to the front end of the group, and Bram Tankink there has been given the nod, I think, from the team to be allowed to work, and that's obviously because of the fact that they're quite happy that this breakaway isn't going anywhere.
Yes, and it's also going to make Discovery work that little bit harder, and maybe weaken their grip when it comes down to it. 32 kilometres, that's 20 miles to go to the finish. 9 seconds, a scant 9 seconds, it's nothing now, but it makes them work. And that is what's going to hurt. Philippe Gilbert continuing on from a good start last year. Looks like he's going to have a good season in 2005. There's the group, nothing, is it? Long, thin line. Is there help at hand at the front? Still the same boys driving it on.
I tell you what, there's not many riders left in this group either. You can just see the back end of the main field. I think a lot of riders have been tailed off because of the pressure of the chase, initially by Quick Step and now obviously by Team Discovery Channel, who've basically got this race nailed back. But what's going to come up very shortly is a repetitive number of cobblestone sections, and one of those sections, the Koningsstraat, is around about 2.4 kilometres in length, and I would say that that will see this whole field split to smithereens.
And shaken to death. Shaken but not stirred down King Street today. Discovery looking good. Quite a nice jersey design, I think, the new Discovery Channel. Here are the 3 leaders. We can span with one camera now, and the rain is still there. Still drizzle on the camera lens. And this is making the road surface a little bit slippery. Here's the final catch. Gilbert at last freewheel. The Discovery boys, all of them on the front, organised just to let them know who's done all of the work. They're going past the 3 escapees. Leon van Bon caught this time around, but you know, he has a habit of slipping into breaks that work, but this one didn't.
He's a clever bike rider though. Look at him, he stayed at the front as soon as he was caught. He didn't lose the wheel, he didn't slip back down through the main field. Looking a bit ragged there, Discovery, for a few moments. I think they need to keep the pressure on. This is a very narrow section of race and they need to keep the pressure on, stay at the front end of the group, because very shortly, in 2 or 3 kilometres or so, there's a nasty little section of cobblestones, the first of 7.
Well, there's been no slackening of the pace since the catching of the breakaway, which is interesting. They're just keeping the pace high. They're heading towards that stretch of cobblestone. I think they call it the criminal strat, which is pretty rather fitting, I think, for the convicts of the road, as they used to call the old riders of the Tour de France. And this is the... no, it's not. I thought it was the entry to the cobblestones, but we've gone straight through.
It's not too far from here. It's around about 1 kilometre or so. This looks like Van Heeswijk on the front. He's not thinking about the sprint at all. I think this race here this afternoon, Phil, is all about Georgie Hincapie for the Discovery Channel. And for Team Quickstep, it's all about Tom Boonen. And Boonen is just over there to the left-hand side, looking pretty good. Hincapie, look at this acceleration, getting out of the saddle, digging deep. He knows now very shortly the cobbles are going to start, and it's a long section of cobblestones.
Van Heeswijk once got 2nd place in Het Volk, so he's also a man that can pop up with some great results. He's won exactly 50 races in his career. He's not a big winner, but he had one heck of a season last year, 13 wins in fact, allowed to in many races make his own way, and he did. First, 29 kilometres to go now off that small stretch of cobblestones, all turn left.
Hincapie's looking very good here, just accelerated out of that corner. He's looking to keep himself at the front end of the main field, and you see just that small section of cobblestones has tailed 1 or 2 riders off the back. Now this is what Hincapie wanted to do. He wanted to get here onto the Criminelstraat in first place. The Kasseia is the Flemish for cobblestones. It might only be 350 metres long, but it does seem like it goes on forever.
Big training for Big George, because of course Paris-Roubaix again will be his target in the early season classics. He's been so close, he's still got to get there.
Look at these guys, they're all looking over their shoulders, they're all looking back to see what sort of damage they've done, but the faces are all pulled straight with the pain of what this race has been this afternoon.
Little attack by Max Van Heeswijk, one Dutchman countered by another Dutchman. Sit up and wait. Who's going next? A little bit of cat and mouse entering up now. There's that next sharp turn onto a new stretch of cobblestones. You've got to hold front position, or pretty close to now. Steenbeekstraat, 600 metres of it. Might get a split on this one, being driven on by a man who's, as I say, has finished 2nd in this before. You've really got to watch when you flick up onto these cobblestones. If your little tyre hits the edge of them, you're down. And when you're on the front, there's an awful lot of men going to run you over.
Steven de Jong there in 2nd place. Van Heeswijk, you know, is a very good bike handler. Before he turned professional, he also used to be a good BMXer, as a lot of the top bike riders, like Robbie Mcewen, for example, used to be as well. Hincapie there is in about 4th or 5th place. And not too far in front of him is Tom Boonen. Boonen is a very good bike rider over these cobblestones. Big support for Belgium here this afternoon. This has always been regarded as the season opener for Belgian cycling. They're off that section of cobblestone. Still no big gap starting to appear in the peloton.
It looks like Tom Boonen has got himself into 3rd wheel there. And that rider's gone clear from Rabobank. He's opened up, and quick reaction from the field. Nice little chance to get away. I think it's Senchens.
I think it is.
28 kilometres to go.
He's put the cat amongst the pigeon there. He waited for the slowing down after the cobblestone section. That's a very good moment to hit these guys hard. Everyone's just been a little bit under pressure, and they go, let me get my breath for a moment. And if you hit them at that point, psychologically, it's a good move. And he's got himself a gap of around about 100 metres very quickly.
Only one result for Roy Senchens in his career. His approach began in 2002. It came the following year, Kuurne Brussels Kuurne, which is still to come this year, of course, as we now open the racing here in this part of Northern Europe. He's off down the sidewalk, and the best place to go, a bit smoother.
It certainly is a bit smoother. It is the following day, always after Het Volk and Brussels-Kern over very similar roads in the southern part of Belgium. It goes over the older Quaremont, it goes over the Mur de Grammont and finishes in the small town of Kuurne. Now Sentjens got himself a nice gap. May have hit them just at the right time, and his team will be able to go onto the defensive now. I have a feeling Team Discovery Channel, though, Phil, have got something special in the bag here, trying to line something up for George Hincapie. Max van Heeswijk is not saving himself at all. Let's just see how that attack happened. Hincapie in 4th or 5th position. Heeswijk came out of that corner in 1st place, looked over his shoulder to see who was going to take up the pace making after him, but nobody else came.
That was Boonen who let go, Kalken. But you know, Sentjens is still really very much a youngster, just over 24 years of age. He was only 24 in December gone. So this is a rider with potentially a great future now, and again another product of the Rabobank system. He's always been a member of Rabobank right through. And so they've let one guy go, now they've all got to start working again and try and bring him back. It's always a worry.
Very much a worry. Yeah, it was Jatislav Ekimov doing a big turn on the front. Leif Hoster looking over his shoulder. Van Heeswijk and George Hincapie looking very good in 3rd and 4th position. Stuart O'Grady there over to the left-hand side. We haven't seen a lot of Stuart O'Grady, but he's a kind of bike rider who enjoys these climatic conditions. I don't think Sentjens is going to go too far, because that 7-second time gap has been wiped out.
Yeah, they got it all together again. Never mind, if you don't try, you never succeed. And Roy Sentjens gave it a good go. He felt good just for a moment there, so he thought he'd find out what happened. Beddingstraat now. This is a 500-metre stretch, half a kilometre. It's a long way to bounce down this stretch, and the peloton are right on him, snapping at his bike wheels. Snapping right at his tail there. And there's a nice little dedication to the bike riders here. One of the famous caricature artists from the area. He loves the sport of cycling, comes from the town of Kortrijk, and very often you will see his paintings in the southwest part of Belgium. 25 kilometres, just over 15 miles from the finish now. No hills, few more cobblestones. It's about 5 stretches left. As one of the Credit Agricole riders see a difficult one here. Pinching some of the sidewalk away from the spectators, but they're all safely through. Right-hand turn, you probably heard the warning shout. I'm amazed really that we're not getting a little split here of more significance, but the pace is very, very high.
Jimmy Casper at the back there for Team Cofidis. It's good to see him riding so well in these classics. He'll have to, I think, look after his own teammate Stuart O'Grady down towards the end, because O'Grady seems to me to be very attentive at the front end of this race.
It's at this stage of the race, when you're following wheels at high speed, you're not looking where you are, you're just hoping they're not taking you into trouble, because the boys at the back are not enjoying it at all. You see the way the snake is forming as they chase wheels, and somebody has tried to open a gap, and that was a game as a Discovery rider.
It was Max van Heeswijk again trying to get himself off the front end of this group. A little bit of frustration coming in now, because at the start of the year everybody's form is not quite there. And Tom Boonen being attentive, coming across the gap. He looks very good, Tom Boonen, here this afternoon. You know, he won the first 2 stages of the Tour of Qatar just about 2 weeks ago, so he's obviously in very good form. He's had some good racing in the warm weather. Bit of a shock to the system, though, to go from 30 degrees Celsius. Now this is O'Grady on the left-hand side. Looks good on a bike, O'Grady, doesn't he?
Brilliant track rider, brilliant bike rider, won an awful lot of medals at every discipline, and now trying. Gold medalist from the Athens Olympics in the Madison, along with his teammate there, Graham Brown, who rides for the Panaria team now, of course, as he always has.
But that was amazing that O'Grady switched across from having ridden the road race, and about 6 days later rode the Madison. He didn't stay in Athens, by the way. He went away to go and train on the track in Germany before coming back to team up with Graham Brown to win that Madison, and what a great race that was for him.
Oh, they came for a medal. They went away with a gold medal. It's only been in 2 Olympic Games, by the way. The Madison and Australian teams have won both of them. The previous time round in Sydney, it was Brett Aitken and Scott McGrory. Hey, look at this. We've got a bit of a gap now. Exactly 15 miles to go.
The gap was started there by Martin Den Bakker in the orange jersey of Team Rabobank. Another guy who's been around for an awful long time, and he's always been a consistent bike rider as well. And this may well be the straw that breaks the camel back, because the peloton there seemed to have sat up.
Well, I just wish we could get a bit close there, because I've got a feeling that Philippe Gilbert has gone into this move as well. That man is certainly making good use of his form. One rider trying to get off the front. Overmeer, as the riders now chase down this breakaway. A chance to see the breakaway now.
Well, there is an FDjeux.com rider in that group, and I think it looks like Robbie Mcewen has got across to the gap as well.
On the left, just obscured, but he's certainly riding like Robbie. And here's Tom Boonen here. Look at this big effort by Tom Boonen. Well, this is curtains for the breakaway if they allow this rider across the gap, and if he gets across and the peloton doesn't go with him, what does that say for his strength? Boonen, again, as Paul has said, won 2 stages of the Tour of Qatar. A little bit different, the weather conditions, and the housing that was more pointed. I think there's probably pyramids and tents, but the weather was superb there.
He's got a strange style, hasn't he, Tom Boonen, when you look at it? He doesn't look smooth. He's all over his bike, but he now... the reason he's going is because George Hincapie is there.
And Robbie.
This is a serious gap.
Oh, huge, because it's Hincapie, Mcewen and O'Grady. They are the big names here, and Boonen can't let that breakaway go. And look at this effort to reach them. A serious effort is called for, and he's found it.
And I think that was Jan Kursipu in the group as well there for Crédit Agricole. Difficult to read these riders' faces, because everybody's face today is etched with pain, not only because of the difficulty of this race, but because of the weather conditions. Boonen has made the junction. He's made the junction, and what's the bet now? They stop racing because he's come up. He is the man of the moment. 24 wins last year. That's Merckx proportions of old. And they're saying that this man might be the next Eddy Merckx. There'll never be a next Eddy Merckx. You only have to read that man's palmarès, his honours list, to know that. But then could be second best, could be Tom Boonen. Well, there's George driving at the front. I'll tell you what, he's never going to be Eddy Merckx, because one thing that Tom Boonen cannot do, and that's go over the big mountain passes like Eddy Merckx. Just looking back there, I think the rest of the main field has suddenly come up as Tom Boonen made the junction.
Once he was there,
the whole of the field rejoined. Hincapie, though, Phil, is certainly possessed.
But it's good to see George back on good form here, so he obviously hasn't idled away the winter months. He's been out on the bike. King Street, this is where Paul was talking about early. Koningsstraat, 700 metres, another long one. George always likes to see the cobblestones. He loves to get on these cobblestones first. He's a wise man.
He's a wise man, and these are a nasty section of cobblestones. Hincapie leading the way. And even though the main field had just made the junction, they're about to see the gap appear once more. Hincapie riding right on the crest of those cobbles. That's the safest place to be. Strangely enough, that's where the cobblestones are the smoothest. O'Grady has made the junction here as well. But looking back, there's a lot of riders under pressure here with 22 kilometres to go. Hincapie looking back to see what sort of damage he's doing.
I'll tell you what, those cobblestones are a bit dicey right now, as the riders just bounce over. And this is a good decision by George, and just by his tempo riding, he's cracked the peloton. This is a man who looks to conquer Paris-Roubaix at one stage of his career, and might be this year, of course. It'll be part of the Pro Tour series if all the organisers stop bickering with one another, and the UCI, we'll see. But right now, George Hincapie's tempo riding has caused the door to open down the centre. He's looking over now, see what damage. O'Grady looks over to see who else wants to come and help him out. And it looks as that Gilbert again gone through. Meanwhile, life at the back. Well, I wouldn't go to the far right like that rider's just gone. It's a rather big ditch there on the right.
Achteraan van de peloton, the back end of the peloton, and it is a bit of chaos coming off these cobblestones as we see again Max van Heeswijk taking up the pace, making up the front. Team Discovery Channel, Phil, I have to say, have been all over the front of this peloton.
Absolutely.
If anybody deserves the win for trying, it's these guys.
I don't like the look of this just now. A bit like we've come through the local farmyard there, but they're all safely over it. Max looks round. Max will be well used to this. Once was voted the cyclist of the year in Holland. Looks like we've got a little bit of help. I think that's Sentjens again who's come up for Rabobank. Ooh, he's stretching his legs.
Tom Boonen is all over this as well. He's in about 4th or 5th position.
It's Den Bakker, isn't it, Paul?
That's Den Bakker, yeah.
Yeah, Martin Den Bakker. 21 kilometres to go over the policeman there, the sleeping speed humps.
O'Grady looks good too there in 2nd place, despite the fact that his face is showing the agony these riders have been through here this afternoon. Tom Boonen looking back. Everybody is under a bit of pressure now. You see they're all looking back because they can feel their bodies saying this is very, very hard. I wonder if we're now creating the gap that we're looking for.
You know, this has been a superb bike race today. These boys have just hammered it today. continually kept the pressure up. There's been no freewheeling in the bunch waiting for a move. They have just pushed this pace on. This is a very fast race today, and it's been really Discovery versus Quickstep and Rabobank. Those teams, plus the intrusion of Stuart O'Grady of the Cofidis squad, they've really been dictating the pace all of the way. 20 kilometres, just 12 miles to the line now. Still absolutely no indication as to who is going to win this race. Lokeren could be facing a big bunch sprint.
Just 20 kilometres to go, and this is another nice little move here. Kevin Hulsmans moving off the front, the chase taken up there by Martin Dimbacker. O'Grady is all over the front of this race. But it is a bit sad, you know, because Stuart O'Grady, when it comes down to these one-day classics, is always very much isolated when it comes down towards the end.
Dimbacker decides he doesn't want to work anymore now. How about giving him a hand? Give us another flick of the elbow, Martin, because that one didn't work. As now he's using his head as well. Everybody for the first time are feeling the pressure of the pace. Chocolat Jacques moving up en masse here, 4 or 5 of their riders. Sorry, the Lotto team, 4 or 5 of their riders. They've also changed the colour this year. Now De Vitaman Lotto. Chocolat Jacques also in the mix there. Holtzmans.
A little bit of a court case. There's Thomas Voeckler.
we both saw him together there, right in the middle. Our hero from the Tour de France last year, a champion of France. Very unusual to see a French rider involved in a race like this, because they don't like these Belgian races.
They certainly don't. Men like Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle have making a habit of riding the big races. Here's big Ludo Dirksens. I tell you what,
he loves these races.
He certainly does, and this is his last year as a professional cyclist. There are not many riders left in this group, and they may well just give the advantage there to big old Ludo.
Well, big old Ludo is the operation. He's only 25 years short of drawing his state pension, because he's 40 now, is Ludo Peters. He passed his 40th birthday in October. Rumour has it he's going to go halfway through this season and then hang up his wheels at the end of the April Classics. This is his way of getting ready for those Classics now. It's a very, very important time of the year for the Belgians. They get massive publicity in the papers here. We're looking at 3 and 4 pages on their national papers like Het Laatste Nieuws or Het Volk, and they know how important this is.
It's a big one for everybody here. The stories just leading up to Het Volk. The last 3 or 4 days have been all about Peter van Petegem, the man who they regard as the king.
That's
another section of cobblestones. Ludo Dirksens gets on there first. This is the Heierstraat, 500 metres. I wouldn't like to be on that motorbike, because you know, it's rather precarious riding a motorbike over conditions like this. These cobblestones are so slippery.
Yeah, me too. I wouldn't like to be on the motorbike. I wouldn't like to be on the bike, to be honest, because we've had a very good race today, apart from that very sad accident to Tristan Hoffman where he's broken his leg. There haven't been many crashes, and these boys are riding these cobbles, despite the slippiness of them, extremely well. Not sure whether we are blocking that motorbike now, but Dirksens is motoring on and driving on. Be lovely to see him win. I don't suppose he will. He had a stage win last year in the Tour of Austria. That was the 7th stage, and before that he's done well in the early season races. And I'm just checking down his record here. I don't think he's ever been placed in Het Volk, and maybe today he's not going to be placed in Het Volk, because they're all back.
They're all back together. They're all onto his wheel. You can see now that Team Lotto are starting to be very attentive. They're thinking about a move down towards the end, which is sure. Oof, that was very close. Those motorbikes certainly should not have stopped there. They were right in the arc of the corner. Because that bike rider was so attentive and so alert, he just managed to flick himself around at the final moment. Let's have a look at this again.
In fact, Dirksens was looking far over to the right, but he managed to pull round. He was looking completely out of his line there, and he went totally wide. I thought we saw an attack by O'Grady. It was O'Grady as we cut to that slow motion shot. And O'Grady looking to see if he can shape a little group here. He won't be happy with a big bunch sprint. He'll want a group, then he'll have a good chance.
Great bike rider.
Oh, fabulous bike rider.
Commonwealth Games gold medalist in the road race in Manchester, a title which he will hopefully try and defend next year, although the Commonwealth Games are in the month of March down in Australia. That's Leon Van Bon. Jan Kersipou. Yeah. Looking a bit further back, there's Ludo Dirksen still there. And I think they might have caused a little bit of a split here in the main field.
And that's Kersipou, as you say, and he's still here. He rode the Tour Down Under with O'Grady, not with him, but there's a Mr. Bookmaker.com rider who's taken a flyer there. O'Grady's got 44 wins under his belt. None this year yet.
Yeah, look at what wins they are. They're all good wins. This is a very good move here by Mr. Bookmaker.com. Immediately you can see Ludo Dirksen has marked it. It's Johan Koenen, I think, just off the front.
All the ones.
17 kilometers to go. The rain is starting to come down just that little bit more now, just tetanizing the muscles.
I'll tell you what, is this Boonen again? No, it can't be. No,
Nick
it
Noyens.
isn't. Yeah, Nick Noyens it is. Who had that wonderful end of season last year. He won 6 races last year. 4 came, I think, in September. He really did turn on it in the style. And Noyens surely will send alarm bells ringing, because Quick-Step will shut off if Noyens gets in the move. They'll expect him to win, and there'll be no counter from them.
Nick Noyens' wife is a professional cyclist as well. She rides for the Vlaanderen ladies team. Their team presentation was just a couple of days ago.
Isn't she also a model?
Yes, she's also a model as well.
A showstopper, but right now this is the man trying to stop the show here. Nick Noyens, again, not quite 25. He came to the fore, really to our attention, with a great 3rd place overall in the Tour of Britain, which was in September early, and days later he was the winner of Paris-Brussels, the Grand Prix Wallonie, and then the Grand Prix Industria. He had a fabulous end to the season, and now I think it could well have been the man here. Everybody watching Tommy Boonen, this could be the man they were trying to get clear, and not Boonen.
Well, this is the Vogelsongstraat, the bird song street, as they say here.
Nothing to do with Henk Vogels, then?
Nothing to do with Henk Vogels, which means bird as well, but it's actually quite a strange habit they have in Belgium. They have bird singing competitions.
Do the birds know?
Well, no, the birds weren't brought into it, but they are kept in cages to try and sing as nicely as they can.
You can do anything in Belgium. This is one magical country, and it's a perfect place to live if you are a professional cyclist or even an amateur cyclist. It's a wonderful hotbed of sport. Nick
Noyens has got a bit of a gap here. He's actually dropped the 2 riders that he came across to. That is Ludo Dirksen just a little bit further back. The main field not too far behind, but this is a long section of cobblestones, 1.5 kilometers. Now this is going to take pressure off Tom Boonen, because this will force Team Discovery Channel to chase down this rider.
This is dangerous. 15 kilometers to go, less than 10 miles to the finish. And looking here at this now, Nick Noyens, turned pro, he's on his 5th season now, 8 wins to his credit, and looking good. That is Coyne again. They've been left now. Dirksen didn't have the speed of Nick Noyens today. Just didn't have the speed or the power to ride these cobblestones. That breakaway has split there. I would think alarm bells are ringing now. Noyens made it happen so quickly, and I'm certain at 15k there to go under the banner, this was the move that Quick-Step had in mind.
This is a good move, although I do think they were really trying to put all their eggs onto the shoulders of Tom Boonen. But Boonen won't mind too much. This is a nice situation for him, because he and his team can take a back seat and force the other teams in the race to come to the front and set the pacemaking to try and pull Nick Noyens back. Kop van der Wegstrijd at the front end of the bike race, and this man is certainly tickling over these cobblestones. The impressive thing about riding cobblestones is to keep your pace nice and high, use a big gear, and strangely enough, if you've got the power, you actually float over the cobbles. These 2 guys now have been pulled back into the fold. That's Koenen on the front, Ludo Dirksen in 2nd place, and I'm trying to see who's taking up the pacemaking at the front end of that group. Noyens now is off the cobblestones. It's not the last section of cobblestones, there's still a couple more to go before the finish. These 2 swinging over, Koenen swinging across there. Ludo Dirksen will go back into the fold. This looks like
It's Leon again, Van Bonnen.
Yep, he's looking over his shoulder. He wants to know whether or not Peter van Petegem is still in this group. I haven't seen very much of him. You know, that section of cobblestones there has certainly caused a lot of damage in the main field. I would say there's only about 35 riders or so left in this group.
Well, I think that was big Mark Lotz who suddenly got in the mix there for Quick-Step to discourage the move, because this is one of their aces in the pack, and they've got him away. And once he went away, he had none of it. He left the other 2, and he's gone for it by himself now. Now it looks like we've got the champion of somewhere here. I can't tell you who it is, but he's got a champion's jersey on his shoulders as the breakaway moves clear. Well, they're not giving up, are they? 14 kilometres to go. There's no way they're giving up. This is again another attack.
It's Uros Moon trying to come up the front.
Moon, yeah. This is the New Jersey champion here from the Phonak squad.
the last team to be brought into the Pro Tour. This is not a Pro Tour event here.
And they had to actually appeal the decision of the UCI to get in. They've been allowed in for the first 2 years of the Pro Tour, unlike the others who are in for 4. And now they've got to prove their worth.
A lot of pressure on these riders now. There's Boonen just over to the left-hand side. He's in a nice position here. He can just sit back and let everybody else chase down not only his teammate, but his very good friend.
Well, this has been a superb bike race. If this is what the season's going to be indicator for, then let's go for it, because these boys have made a real race of this today. And Nuyens, I think he's doing incredibly well to stay away from that field, because they are not slowing down at all. He's the one that's got the slight advantage of seeing the road first because of the conditions, but of course he's on his own. And the only advantage is, and very unusual this at this time of the year, there's absolutely no wind here today.
It's very strange for this part of the world, and especially in Belgium and in a bike race, because that is normally the most difficult part of any bike races. Nick Nuyens there on the left-hand side has got himself around about a 10-second advantage over the front end of the main field. Now this is a very nice move coming off the front. Max van Heeswijk very attentive there, getting onto the back of it.
Yeah, Sentjens on the front, De Jonge
and Stuart O'Grady.
He's also been extremely attentive. He rode a good Jacobs Creek Tour down under. He finished 3rd overall, and he didn't get a stage win, unusual for him. But he did show us he's got good form. But of course, in the lovely heat of South Australia is one thing, and then you come here. And this is an attack again now, and this is Leif Hoster.
Leif Hoster's a man that this team is talking about as possibly going through to the Tour de France because of his time trialling ability. A man that they reckon could be very good in the team time trial. Stefan de Jonge there in 2nd place, Tom Boonen, Stefan Weseman from T-Mobile. But look at the faces on these guys. It really has been a very difficult day.
This is full on now. Boonen in 3rd place. He's not going to help. And in fact, Tom Boonen saying, well, get back in because I'm not doing anything, because they're both Belgian, of course, and understandably so. He's not going to spoil the tactics of his teammate, who's up the road still by that 12 seconds. Still very bridgeable indeed. And the peloton recovering a little bit. Stefan Weseman is the mauve jersey there.
And coming across there is Philippe Gilbert as well in the white jersey of Francis Dejeux. He's had a great race. He's been in a lot of the moves, very attentive. But this man has got a long straight road in front of him. Not good.
When you've only got 12 seconds, this is not good. There's the face of Nick Nuyens, 25 years of age in May this year.
It's a long, hard ride. There's another section of cobblestone still to go before we get down towards the finish line. You see the way he's moving across there. He's looking for the motorbikes. There's nothing illegal about that. It's all up. The responsibility is of the motorbike drivers to get out of the way of the bike rider. And if you can take advantage of a little bit of slipstreaming, well, that's professional error.
Yeah. There's still plenty of boys willing to work, but the Quick Step know how to put themselves into the right place to spoil the attacks. Is that Vasseur?
That looks like Cedric Vasseur going out on the attack, a man from the north of France. His dad lives in Saint-Omer, which is not too far away from Dunkirk. And charging out of the gap again, Team Discovery all over the front of this. 2nd place there in that line is Tom Boonen. Tom Boonen right now is riding a very defensive race, and I think the whole of Quick Step have decided it's all for one and all for a man by the name of Nick Nuyens. And if it does all come back together, I'm still sure that the man at the front there, Tom Boonen, can come with the win. And Robbie Mcewen here, strangely enough, at the back.
Yeah, a long way back down, I must say. Mcewen may have felt now, well, he's done all he can do. He's gambling on a bunch sprint, and he's going to ride from the back at the moment. We've seen a great race today from the front, and that peloton, although we haven't actually seen it, has shrunk quite a lot. It's not a big bunch now, is it?
The Italian champion just in front of Robbie Mcewen there as well, Christian Moreni. We've not spoken very much about him this year, but he rides for Quick Step, and I don't think they'll be too happy with him sitting at the back of the group when they need to be defending the possibility of a win here, because Nick Nuyens, if you just have a look at that gap, Phil, has nudged it up to 1/4 of a minute. Strange pedalling style as well, looking over his shoulder to see what sort of gap that he's got. He's obviously not very confident. He knows that this will take pressure off the rest of the team. He knows this gives the advantage to his men in that group, and especially to the man by the name of Tom Boonen, who almost certainly will know how to finish this off if it all comes back together.
10 kilometres left. The Rabobank rider who's just swung off the front is the hard-working Martin Den Bakker there, former champion of the Netherlands. and just had his 36th birthday. Another remarkable man. He's now in his 16th season as a professional. That is in an incredible long time.
It's a long time to be a professional nowadays, especially with the sport going to such a high level. Leif Hoster there near the front for Team Discovery Channel. Kevin Hulsmans is the big tall rider from Quick Step in second position. Watch him take up second position. What he'll do now, once the rider from Discovery Channel starts to set the pace at the front, he'll slow down a fraction to try and give the advantage to his teammate. And in fact, it's working to pretty good effect, because Kevin Noyens has in fact stretched it out to 20 seconds. Bit of discussion here at the back. How are you doing, Robbie? I don't feel so good today, mate.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I'm riding now.
Peter van Petegem. No, I don't think it's going to be the day for... That's Nico Matin over to the left-hand side. I don't think it's going to be the day here for Robbie Mcewen.
These two guys, Mcewen and Peter van Petegem, live in the same town of Brakel, where the race has not been far away from today. It's been through it twice, in fact. And they played the part well, but now they're just waiting for a result by sprinting it out if they get the chance. And that gap has gone up, and 9 kilometres out. They've got to think of something. There's the face of George Hincapie now. Sunglasses removed. All action. O'Grady. Some hard-working boys here, sitting on some great form. There's Thomas Vogler.
Kirsipou going through as well. This is not a very big group, actually.
No, it's shrunk alarmingly. We've not been to the back with the cameras. We haven't seen how the riders have disappeared. I think they must have split.
I think it certainly has split. You know, this is a group of around about 30 odd bike riders, and this man is actually starting to look very solid here. He's got 21 seconds, bobbing about a little bit. He's still got an energetic pedaling style. It's a long run in towards the finish. The big advantage he's got, and he knows in the back of his mind, if he fails, the team can still take over, because they have got probably the best sprinter in that group. And although Robbie Mcewen was sitting at the back of the group, he really didn't look as if he was in one of his better days, and it's still his team at the front doing most of the pacemaking though.
Yes, Robbie knows exactly where he sits in the world of professional cycling, and if he started to feel bad, then he'll shut down. He knows he'll pull out a sprint if it's required, especially if it's for first place. But I think because one or two riders have now desisted a little bit, including Stuart O'Grady for the moment, this gap has gone out to 24 seconds. Rabobank, Chocolat Jacques and the Lotto team. The Lotto team continuing to work, but...
Van Petegem has come to the front. I think that little bit of discussion that he had there with Robbie Mcewen was, Robbie said, well, you guys, if you can bring it back together, I'll produce the sprint. And that's exactly what you were saying. The thing about Robbie Mcewen, even if he's out of his mind in difficulty, he can produce a sprint if there's a victory at the end of the day. This is Nico Matin, and the fact that they brought up Peter van Petegem would indicate that maybe Robbie Mcewen does have a little bit left in those legs of his.
Well, he should have. He's had 8 victories already this year, which is incredible, but he's won a lot of races, criteriums especially in Australia before he came over. He also was a brilliant winner, and I was there in the National Road Race Championship, which was in the state of Victoria. He really rode such a strong race. He attacked from the gun over the hills, and if anybody wanted to win, they had to go with him, and he won. It was a great ride, one of the best wins I've seen Robbie take.
In fact, he didn't wait for the sprint on that occasion, did he?
Not at all, no.
Nick Noyens looking pretty solid here with 25 seconds advantage. But Team Lotto now, I think, are starting to whip up the pace at the front of the group. Stuart O'Grady is also looking very good. O'Grady's been all over the front of this bike race. Tom Boonen and the rest of the Quick Step team have taken a bit of a back seat. They're forcing and allowing everybody else to do the pacemaking here on the front end of the race.
So a bunch of Dutch riders here now. Lokeren is the place, Lokeren is the finish. Lokeren is 7 kilometres from the line, 27 seconds, he's hanging. I'm beginning to think it's going to be a possibility. I really didn't think it would be. I felt sure that he was the carrot and that Boonen was the man, but Boonen's done a great job at blocking the moves, as has Kevin Hulsmans as well, and he's holding a gap, nearly half a minute, you know. That's going to take a huge effort, and these boys have been flat out for miles and miles now, and they're not getting any closer.
They've been absolutely flat out since they came over the Molenberg. This is Den Bakker on the front. That's Peter van Petegem there in second place. The gap is still hovering at the 30-second margin, and if you look at the cars just coming around the corner there, that's an indication that there are certainly not very many riders left in this race. Nick Noyens has still got the big advantage of a half a minute's lead over the front end of the main field.
I've been trying to work out who that Rabobank rider was. Well, I've just realised it's Matty Heyman, the Australian, the tall Matty Heyman, who's been doing a lot of work up front as well. But now, coming back together, Cofidis pushing up a couple of riders there, including O'Grady. Meanwhile, out front is Nick Noyens. It's been 110% commitment, this rider, and he's hanging on. In fact, he's nudged a couple of seconds here at 6 kilometres. The pain will only last another 3.5 miles. That's still a long way to go.
At this speed, that's around about 8 minutes, and he will keep pushing his body. But the fact as he gets a little bit closer to the finish, he'll be able to accept and support that pain just a little bit more, because if he can hold on to that advantage, he knows that over the last kilometre or so, they are not going to wipe away a half a minute. He can take all the risks going around these corners. I just hope his tyre pressures are correct, because if they're too hard on a day like this, that bike will slide all over the place. He's a small rider, and looks as if it's Cedric Vasseur again trying to slip off the front end of the group. He's been very good here this afternoon, especially making that comeback after some very nasty allegations made against him last year in the Cofidis doping scandal affair, and it seemed as if there were some falsified statements submitted to the investigation. He spent almost 6 months of last season trying to clear his name, which he finally did.
Karsten Kroon now having another go. He was a man in the breakaway when we started commentary. He's had a few deep breaths and he's digging again, seeing if anything's going to become of this. He really doesn't want to go alone the way he's looking behind. He's trying to draw the sting of everybody else. This rider, he's lost a couple of seconds. He is yo-yoing, whether they realise it or not. The attack by Karsten has brought it back to 25 seconds.
This is how he went, you know, on the cobblestone section of the Songbird Street, 1.5 kilometres cobblestone section. He didn't really attack here. He just put the pressure on, looked over his shoulder, and blew Koonen and Ludo Dirksens off his wheel, and that gave him the advantage, and he's kept going ever since then. You know, he's not really losing very much of that advantage. It went up to a maximum of around about 30 seconds. But at this time of the year, it's quite possible for something like that to succeed. It's Matty Heyman now, as you mentioned, on the front, whipping it up for Team Rabobank. This is the strategic moment that could tip the scales to the advantage of Nick Noyens, because the majority of the guys in this group here are starting to think about where they need to position themselves for the sprint.
Well, George Hincapie knows as he pushes through and keeps the pressure on. 28 seconds, 4 kilometres to go. The bunch has shrunk. There's huge effort here, which gives you some idea of the ride and the quality of Noyens. As he holds them off, they are locked at the same speed. The break, the bunch, 30 seconds. If anything, Noyens is the man just nudging it out. 31 now.
Hincapie looking over his shoulder. I think Hincapie now has decided it's not going to be the race for him here this afternoon, and he was looking to see for the position of Max van Heeswijk in this group, because he will try and set the sprint up for Van Heeswijk. Look at the face here.
Yes,
this is sheer pain, but I'll tell you what, mate, there's only about 6 minutes of pain left. If you can just hold on, this could be a big win.
One of the biggest, certainly his biggest this year, not the biggest in his career, but a great way to start, because as far as the Belgians are concerned, this is a classic race, well known, well loved, the 60th time it's been held, and of course Belgians have dominated the results over the years. Could be a great result here for Noyens. He takes it easy on these left-handers, takes it wide, very wise man, even sticks to the cycle path, but that is a horrible sight again, a long straight road, but he's getting half a minute now.
Just looked over his shoulder for a little bit of confirmation.
Won't have seen anything there.
He won't see anybody, because they won't have cornered that section of the road yet. Gets down, gets the pace up as high as possible, looking down at the onboard computer, and he'll try and keep it at around about 47 or 48 kilometres an hour, and he will then understand that the guys chasing him to catch him are going to have to do 60.
Here we are around the bend, and I have to say I would never give this move a chance of success. I thought it was a decoy. But obviously Nick Noyens has thought something else. This was a move to victory, and it's going that way now. Just looking again at Rabobank, continuing. Karsten Kroon looking over a little bit more help. There's plenty of riders willing to work here. They just can't get up to him.
Well, I think this was, you know, you mentioned this being a decoy. Well, I think it is a decoy move as well. But what it has done is it's taken the pressure off Tom Boonen. Everybody was expecting Tom Boonen to be the big #1 favourite for Team Quickstep. and they swapped the tactics halfway through the race. And once this man got this advantage, they said, we will play on the defensive. We'll leave everybody else to do the chasing. And with 2 kilometers to go and a 31-second advantage, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to catch this man, because looking at the way he's pedaling, he's not losing any of his energy or enthusiasm. He's
at the limit of his fitness for the day, but I think, you know, so too is the peloton. If they don't start to close now, and they're not going to, once they reach 2 kilometers, they're all going to start thinking now, okay, he's gone, who's for second place? And the pace, the gap, I think, will now open.
There's one thing that's going to hurt him just finally. There's a little drag up over the motorway just before the finish. Little Tommy Vogler trying to get off the front end of the field. He will always attack this young man, the champion of France, the wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France last year for 10 days. He became the darling of France, and I have to take my hat off to him, Phil. He is a brave and courageous bike rider to come up here and sample the nature of Belgian racing.
Took a lot of confidence from 2 big wins, his yellow jersey in the Tour de France and of course his French national title. He won 8 races in the end last year, so he had a fabulous season. New team for him, Boyga Telecom this year on the block. There's is that the one to go? Yes, it is. That's the kite, 0.6 of a mile. There's the little rise, once over the top, charge into town. He's won it. Nobody's going to get him now. They haven't gained a second in the last kilometre.
Well, 30 seconds is about 550 metres at this speed, and he'll be able to pick himself up to about 50 kilometres an hour as he goes off the top of this little hill. This artificial hill, I should say.
Heyman, Hulsmans, and I think Den Bakker. Jan Kersipoo's lining himself up in that green jersey. Could be a bit of a result for him. Watch out for Tom Boonen, though. He's had a lovely, easy ride here. And it's his teammate who's going to take the laurels, so the win's in the bank anyway for the squad. And again, I think that's Leif Hoster having a bit of a dig down the right, trying to steal another result for Belgium here. But this man's preparing for his victory salute, just making sure nobody is creeping up. That's very nice of the cameraman. Oh, look at that. Nick Nuyens is in the lead.
Coming out of the mist, coming out of the gloom. It's going to be a bright day, though, for Nick Nuyens. Very shortly, you'll see the banner that says 500 metres to go. I think that was it. He should be able to celebrate fairly shortly. This is going to be a great win.
Yes, that's it. It's all over. That's it. Victory is assured. What a great breakaway. And what a fine piece of riding that was. A real class actor there, Nick Nuyens. Rode them off his wheel. He never got more than 30 seconds. He'll lose a bit now because he's celebrating. They're sprinting. Watch that far bend. There won't be a lot in it now. But a great result, and Belgium will be happy now, and so too will Quick-Step. What a result for the manager there, Patrick Lefebvre. This is the race to the line. Stefan de Jong, the Rabobank rider, mixing, but here he comes. Big Tom Boonen is making a Quick-Step clean sweep. First, second, de Jong gets third, and I think it was Nico Eekhout has taken it for Chocolat Jacques in 4th place. And they were just around about 14-15 seconds, but that's because Nuyens slowed down.
Not very much at all, but that was a well-timed attack there by Nick Nuyens, and great teamwork and defence, I have to say, by Team Quick-Step. This is not just the victory of one man, Phil. This is the victory of a team, Patrick Lefebvre.
Yes, he's just gone off to the right of our camera now. This will be seen as a great result. Tremendous rivalry this year between this team Quick-Step and De Vitamin Lotto, because De Vitamin were once part of the sponsorship of Quick-Step. A little bit of argy-bargy in the courts, and it's now the other way around. So Quick-Step will be very happy with a 1-2 over arch rivals Lotto in their own country. This man is continuing where he ended last season as a winner. Massive crowd. Just look at the crowd here. This sport is more popular than ever, and this is without the great pedalling of Eddy Merckx. They struggled for a little while in Belgium, but now they've got the bike riders, and here comes number 2, Tom Boonen. He gives us a victory salute as well. And Stefan de Jong, the Dutchman, in 3rd. And he's just looking now for his... oh, dear me!
Well, I didn't see that. In fact, just as we came up to the finish, it looked as if somebody came up through the inside of Tom Boonen, who was still actually celebrating, and he went down fairly hard.
He did.
But that was the man who won the race. What a long breakaway, too. You know, that was the last 20 kilometres he led, and he never had more than a 30-second advantage. I bet a lot of riders in the main field didn't think he was going to do it.
Well, here's the view of a winner. This is what it feels like to win Het Volk. 60th time we've held the race, and we can see now what his bird's eye view is of the finishing line. and it wasn't the fault of any of the cameramen, that's for sure. There's the result confirmed then. Nick Noyens, Tom Boonen, same team, first and second. De Jong gets third. Eickhout it was in fourth. Bert de Waller in fifth. The Belgians did well on home soil. Uras Moon is nation's champion. He finishes in sixth. And Max van Heeswijk rode well there to get Discovery an 8th place finish. Ludo Dirksens riding out his last year in 10th. Very nice trophy indeed. And Nick Noyens is going to have to carry that home. We'll need a special bus for that one, I think. And Tom Boonen there, well, he can give him a hand, can't he?
He certainly can. That was a great move by the whole of the team. Good team strategy, and at the end of the day, they got what they wanted. Tom Boonen's on the podium, and Nick Noyens get himself the win.
Well, as they shake hands all round, I hope you agree with us. That was